Jackie Dean.
I want to also commend the previous Justice Committee in the Parliament before this, in the 50th Parliament I think it was, for their work on this bill, the Objectionable Publications and Indecency legislation bill. And it is a subject I'm not surprised to see that Labor are supporting this bill. And I want to congratulate the Labor members of the Select Committee. As the former Speaker did mention, there were several Labor members, Honourable Mary Ann Street in particular, who I know to make a great contribution to this kind of legislation in her time in Parliament. This government, as all governments of course, take child abuse very seriously and are working hard to do everything we can across a number of spheres to combat child abuse, and members will recall the Vulnerable Children Bill, the Vulnerable Children Act, which was passed in the last Parliament, sponsored by the Honourable Paula Bennett, which put children at the front and centre of the consideration of the government agencies, of police, of justice, of social development, of education, of health, provided for better communication, more joined-up services by those government agencies, and a stronger focus on protecting young children from harm. Of course, that bill and a lot of the work this government does is around child abuse. In this bill, we are talking largely around online abuse and cyber abuse of children and indecent and objectionable publications. But I think in the wider context, it would be fair to say that this government has done a lot of work, supported by of parties around the House, and I do acknowledge that this is an issue that does cross party boundaries. Interesting to know, and gratifying, that the number of children abused in the year ended June of last year fell by 12% on the previous year. Okay, that's just 1 year of figures, and these things do vary, but it is gratifying to know that the work that is being done by government agencies on behalf of us all, on behalf of the Crown, are making a material impact on the level of child abuse in New Zealand. Long may that continue, and that is why it is important that we keep our attention on this issue, keep bringing decent pieces of legislation to the House so that we can attack, if you like, this issue across a number of fronts. Just a couple of others I want to mention, because they are really assisting in making a material difference to children, and that is the Social Workers in Schools program. Now that covers all decile 1 to 3 schools now. Now that is affecting and contributing to the safety and to the well-being of around 140,000 children in New Zealand, and I think that's...
Order. I think the members now had about 4 minutes. It would be good if she could come to the bill that we're debating. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Am I dressed okay to continue? Thank you. Good. As is the Social Worker in Hospitals initiative, and I'm going to move very quickly, but I always think it's important to provide a bit of context, and having done that, I will now move specifically to mention the purpose of the bill, which quite simply is to increase penalties for the production, trading and possession of objectionable publications, and that includes images depicting the sexual abuse of the children. Maybe it is, Mr Speaker, that I simply didn't want to come to the matter in hand, because it is a hard matter to speak about, but speak about it we must. The bill does amend a number of acts, those being the Films, Videos and Publications Classification Act, the Custom and Excise Act, of course, and the Crimes Act. There will be a supplementary order paper breaking the bill into 5 separate bills: Films, Videos and Publications, Customs and Customs and Excise, the Crimes Amendment Bill, Accident Compensation. Now that covers off cover for mental injury with Indecent Offences Bill, so that's why the ACC bill is being amended, and of course the Vulnerable Children's Worker Safety Checking of Indecency Offences Amendment Bill. And if I might say so, speaking to relevance, Mr Speaker, my words around social workers in schools really does relate directly to the amendment of contained within the Vulnerable Children's Bill. So just tying it in, I hope for your satisfaction, or the Speaker's satisfaction. So the main provisions in this bill include increasing the maximum penalty, and those penalties have been considerably increased, and that is for the importation or exportation of an objectionable publication. Currently sits at 5 years penalty. Maximum penalty will double, and the penalty for that will be 10 years of imprisonment. Increasing the maximum penalty for distributing or making an objectionable publication. The penalty for that currently sits at 10 years, and that is increased to 14 years imprisonment. And if you think about that term of imprisonment, it is a menu from which a judge can choose to protect an offender from children by incarcerating them in prison, but it also on the upside gives the opportunity for our corrections system to provide some rehabilitation and corrective training to those offenders whilst they are in prison. And it's notable that rather than just incarcerating people for however long, up to 14 years, but maybe 11, 12, that is a good period of time for a prisoner to undergo a number of programs to address her offending, as the case may be. That is the other half of the equation, because we know that that prisoner is ultimately going to be returned to society under conditions, under parole conditions, and maybe under court orders. But nonetheless, it's one thing to lock them up, and increasing the penalties is a good move. But of course, ultimately, these offenders are going to go back into society, and when one has a look at the work of the parole boards perhaps and sees that offenders come back who've been released come back in front of the parole board because yet again they are hanging around a city mall, yet again they have got hold of a cell phone and are beginning to contact young children and beginning that whole ghastly process of grooming young children yet again. We need to take the issue of reoffending very seriously indeed. There will be, under this bill, the presumption of imprisonment for repeat offenders, and those repeat offenders include any person convicted of child exploitation material offence for a second or later time. So that's for repeat offenders, and from what I have come to learn around this area, that there is a strong incidence of offenders planning to reoffend, giving a good deal of their time when they can in grooming and planning to reoffend, and that is why the multi-pronged approach that this government is taking to these offenders by increasing the penalties but also at the same time providing for rehabilitation is making a difference and will continue to make a difference. Making it clear in the Classification Act that possession of objectionable material includes intentionally viewing material over the internet without consciously downloading or saving it. And so the internet seemed like a good idea at the time, I'm sure, but as we all know, a large percentage of internet use is not Googling for our speech notes. Also creating a new offence of indecent communication with a young person, and that is a person under the age of 16 years. So indecent communication with a young person can occur in a variety of old media and new media. And of course, nowadays, text messaging, picture messaging, Instagrams, all the new technologies that are so, Snapchats that are so very attractive to increasingly younger and younger children, internet chatting, and of course the telephone. This we have in this legislation, we are future-proofing child protection by recognising that the technology is changing and the use of technology, thank you, is changing very rapidly. Mr Speaker, thank you for your indulgence. I know I have strayed a little. Thank you for indulgence, but this is an important bill and I commend it to the House.